Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Casquarelli.
Thank you. On the day of 9/11, I was working in my company, Engine 225 in East New York, Brooklyn. And we were watching on the news as everybody else was, waiting for our turn to turn out and help. Later on that day, we finally got the call. As we were going there, what I had not realized yet is that when we got into the city, into that cloud of smoke, it was going to affect all of our bodies, all 5 senses were going to come into effect, almost like an overload. Of course, the first sense to kick in was our sight. You can just see that fog, that thick fog in front of us. When we finally entered it, you can now, everything else clicked in. You can taste the bitterness of the smoke and the debris in your mouth. You can feel the grit on your fingers. You can smell the bitterness. You can hear the different sounds. That first hit of air you took, it hurt your lungs, the sharpness of it. But our bodies do acclimate to different environments. When we finally got down to the site, we could see even more. Where there used to be 2 buildings, there were now 2 piles, about 70 feet high, and that's where we were ordered to operate on to start the rescue and recovery mission. Shortly thereafter, I was then approached by one of the chiefs. He was lifting me out of my unit. I was a lieutenant on the job. They gave my crew to another officer, and they put me in a communication office, which is what I have quite a bit of experience in, and they needed help over there. So I did it because this is what they were asking me to do. While I was there, we were doing shifts of 24 hours on and 24 hours off, and it just repeated itself for a couple of months. But while I was down there, starting on that first day, after seeing the death and the destruction, I knew I needed to change my attitude about things down there. I needed to take my emotion out and away of working down there. I didn't want to be cruel to what had happened down there, but in order for me to get through the shift and do my job, that's what I needed to do. So I kind of reverted to a robot mode. I took my emotion completely out of this thing, and I did a good job of it. Even when I went home to my family, I stayed that way. It was the only way I knew I was going to be able to make it through without breaking down. So I was like that at work, I was like that at home, I was like that wherever I went. And my family, my wife knew enough to keep their distance. If I needed them, I would go to them. But in the meantime, that's how it was, it's how I wanted it to be. A couple of weeks went on into the operation, and something kind of dramatic happened to me. I developed a blister. A blister of all things. This is about 2 or 3 weeks in, and it was getting kind of bad as the day went on. I'm sure we've all had them. We know what that's all about. So right behind us, from the command post, a first aid station had just opened up. So we hit a lull in the action. I told my partner, look, I got to disappear for about 10 minutes. And he said, okay, I got it. So I walked across the street, and I sat down, and the EMS worker told me, take off your shoe and sock. Let me get some Band-Aids and a couple of dry socks and see what we could do to help you out. When I sat down there and she disappeared into the back, that was actually the first moment I had by myself. And I was starting to reflect now at that moment. It gave me an opportunity to reflect on the death and destruction, the families of those that lost people down here. And all these other visions were flooding into my head. It was I never experienced anything like that before. And just to give you a picture of one vision that I had was that while we were working down there on the south side of the South Tower, hanging from the debris, was the arm of a firefighter. It was unmistakable because it had the black turnout gear on and a yellow stripe on it. So we knew it was one of our guys, one of the 343. We couldn't go to get him out because we were afraid there would be a secondary collapse and do more harm. But what they had the idea to do was to put a ladder up to it, and they wanted to see what they could do to identify this man. And what they did was they removed his glove and they took one of the fingers, and they brought it to the coroner's office to run a print, and that's how they identified this guy and told the family. I thought it was a good decision, even though as gruesome as it may sound, but I thought the right decision was made. But these are the things that were rushing back in my head. So when the EMS worker came back out with the stuff to fix me up, after she was done, she looked at me and she saw that in my face there was more to it than just a blister now. There was something else going on. And she sat down next to me, and she just nudged me a little bit like this. It was just ever so slight body contact. And she also said to me, just something very regular, but to me it was very humane. Do you have something you want to talk about? Is there anything bothering you? I know this isn't a very dramatic story for you. It does something to me, but it was with her that I broke down into tears and had my moment with her, which I was holding in for 3 weeks. I wouldn't allow myself that moment because, you know, I'm macho, you're a man in the fire department, and I got a job to do all of that baloney, in a way, really. She gave me some other words of advice before I can get myself back together again and get back to my post. And she said, you know, I don't know what you're doing out there. I don't know how many people you're taking care of, but you got to remember there is one more person that you got to take care of out there, and that's you. You got to give yourself a couple of minutes. You're entitled to it. Do that. Take care of yourself. And I brought those words forward with me, and it helped me out a lot. It really did. When I got home, I again, for the first time, walked into an empty house, and I had my moment all over again. But later on that day, when my wife and my children got home, I got the love and affection I needed from them that I was pushing away. And I finally opened up to them, told them how I felt, and I got the I love yous, etc. So it was at that very moment that I was able to switch myself back from robot to humanity again, and I'm very grateful for that.